Welcome back, everyone, to Neyyah. We have finished exploring the Scarlatti Towers, a new area that we couldn't do much in, and now I'm going to explore whatever's behind this blue portal today. And here's your warning that this is going to be a lore-heavy episode. So, if that's not what you want, you can skip to the next video. Otherwise, be prepared to do a lot of reading. So we're in some kind of cave, and we can look and see a sign up there. Actually, we'd have to get a little closer before we can actually read what it says. And I'm not entirely sure what this is supposed to represent. It almost looks like it's like a bottle, uh, but we can't really get any closer to it to take a look. Alright, so we've got a big building in the center of this island with two towers on the side. We've actually seen something that looks similar to this. It was on the mural in the big cave in the Lavanda zone that showed like a bunch of different areas. I think it was that one. Was that the place? Yes, it was there. So it must have been, that mural must have been depicting this location. And the name of it actually is on the sign that we saw coming in that we can't translate. But if I pull up the map, it'll tell us the good old English name, Pinorvia Point. And so we came in this way. We're about to enter this building. This is called the main chambers. We have a signal tower. And we got that note down in the basement of the Laridigun Tower talking about how it's important to use signal towers here and on the Galorfiak mines. I believe that's what we wanted to have. We also have a camera tower. And I will be honest, I will get these two mixed up a lot. In fact, I might have mixed them up even now. Even though I am saying their names and looking at them, it's quite possible I have mixed them up in my head because it's two towers that we have here and they look rather similar. So if I mess that one up, oops. We have an old guard tower here. This is not the old guard tower that is being referenced in Vermeer's journal. That's something entirely different. The old guard tower is a little bit harder to find than this. We have a Volk tower. We've seen one of those before on a map. It's Scarlatti Towers. We didn't get to see the tower, but we saw it on the map. We have an old dock, guardian statues, crystal mechanism and camera. Last time we saw any of that was at the arrival sector, or Felizu Island, right at the start of the game. We saw those. There's another one of these here. And then the Pelska Shrine entrance and the Constellation Tower. So quite a lot to explore. So we'll start with this building, which we need a key to enter. That's going to be our spare key. You can't actually get to this location without the spare... Well, no, you can get to this location without the spare key if you don't pick up the spare key from the office. But it's very unlikely. Chances are by the time you can get here, you already have the key. But if you forgot it, you're not getting in this building, the main chambers. Alright, so looks like a gathering hall. We got the seats for everybody here, as well as a central space with 1, 2, 3 chairs. I'm going to guess a fourth chair is behind this one to make it nice and even. Some lecterns here. That's what that looks like with books on them. If we head around the side of the building, there's another door out. We're not going to take that right yet. I'm going to keep exploring in here. And we have a mural at the back of the building. You got a guy here with a robotic looking head. They kind of do look robotic. They look like they're wearing a bunch of metal and holding spears. They're clashing, and then we have drawings of all the flora. So you got your Nyashka plant here. This one's the Gafunka mushroom. Felizu plant. This was the Pelorian flower, Warlat flower here, and then all the ones that don't matter. I actually don't know if this depiction of the Fazaltians, because that's of course what this is. We're in Fazalta. This is a depiction of them. I don't know if this is meant to be like, this is what they actually look like, or if this is a sort of artistic representation. Kind of the only drawing we really have of a face of a Fazaltian And it's definitely stylized. So if they are humanoid or they look like humans, then this is a stylization. Unless they're not supposed to be. We actually don't 100% know what that is. And then we have all these stars in the sky as well as numbers. We know that these are numbers. And the fact that they're up here means that the numbers are somehow connected to constellations, and we can gather that there's like a constellation number system because of Amir's journal, mentioning that we're going to have a code with a combination of flora and constellation numbers. So that's where they get this number system from, is constellations in the sky. It's just interesting that they only bother to write down the constellations that are the simple numbers we'll learn. I don't see all of them here. This one here I think is 1. We know that. I think this one we've learned is number 4. This is either 2 or 3. And we really only know the first 4 numbers, but we'll eventually learn the ones that we need to know. And then we have a nice long mural here we can't fully read. So let's take a look around the rest of the room. I see a staircase going up. And that's about all we have on the outskirts. If we head back to the center here and look here, this main chair, we can zoom in and see a sculpture or whatever, a plaque of one of those masks with the eyes. Now these are the eyes pointing out, or the right angle triangles actually pointing up and in, depends on which way you see it pointing. This would represent Golorfiak mines, I believe, because this would be the yellow mask. And then we have a document here that says, I, Gelatrim of the Payoltish Clan, come before you at Pinorvia Point, within the walls of this main chambers, to greet and welcome the other members of the Payoltish Clan under the watch of this Philidian community. I am here to serve, guide, and protect the people of this Philidian under the light of the Pelskas. Today, I will aid the discussions relevant to strengthening our community, hearing the voice of our people, and helping to develop the harvesting and delivery of our paidas in the name of Fizalta, in the name of Konanavik. Some kind of greeting and or benediction. Gelatrim. So Gelatrim, I imagine, would be the ruler or the representative from Golorfiak Mines, I suppose. So that's that. We can take a closer look at this. We've got definite interesting sculpture here. I'm looking at some kind of model tower, and it's got a triangle on the top. And we haven't seen this exact model, but we did see a tower with crystals on top with a triangle at Felitu Island in the harbor zone. And this has the triangle for Golorfiak Mines. So this would be, yeah, this would be the tower for Golorfiak Mines. It's got 3 circles, got the triangle with the slats on it. So I imagine that these are the same. These triangles look solid, but I think it's because there's actually a solid wall at the back of this triangle, and then the slats are on the front, so it's not see-through entirely. And then behind us is this yellow orb that's being gripped by these metal tentacles. If I back up a little more, can I look up now? If I back up a little more, I actually see the yellow orb being held here. And then there's the model of the clamp that's supposed to be done for the levitation crane for the harvesting of the paidas. Over here is a red orb and then a blue orb, and then you can kind of see it. There's a green orb behind it there. So red would be Felitu Island, green is Scarlety Towers, yellow is Golorfiak Mines, which leaves blue for Pinorvia Point, which is of course the portal we've come through. So yeah, this represents the paidas, or the paida harvest, and of course they're obsessed with that. That's pretty much what they're here for. They are having their official town halls in this area, I suppose. And then if we head around this circle again, we can check out the lecterns and see the books here. This book's got a drawing of, I would guess, the paidas here. We got the vines and then the 4 circles. Yeah, the harvesting of the paida. Let these words of our land, our blood, keep on empowering our people to shine, to be the best we can be, and learn from our mistakes to make Fizalta a better world to live in. By the order of Lord Konanavik, I, Tassila, one of the 4 rulers of Fizalta, do hereby share my knowledge of our Fizaltian ways. Just guessing, Tassila, I would say, like, if I'm looking at a foreign language, I think it's a T, not a J. Maybe it's Tassile, but that's one of the 4 rulers. So not Gelatrim, somebody else here. In Galahanti, this is how you spell or write the harvesting of the Paida. Now, this is where I personally first translated the Galahanti. Um, you can find an object that lets you read Galahanti, and it'll translate it for you. But this area of the game, the main chambers, gives us enough Galahanti to English that it's possible to create your own cipher. And I say cipher because Galahanti is not really a language. It's just English, but with a different script. And the script isn't even naturalistic language. You can see that every letter is this wedge shape, and it's either pointing to the right, to the left, down, or up. And then there's a number of dots after it. Those are the only options. No script in the world would ever be written like this, but it is a code. So if you think of it as a code that is meant to be cracked rather than a language, it makes more sense. And I think we'll find somewhere in the game that will refer to Galahanti as a code rather than a language, which makes more sense. Like, if it was intended to be a real language, it is so much not, that even someone like me looks at it and goes, that's not real. But if it's a code, it makes more sense. It's not a very difficult code to crack if you see enough of it. My personal opinion. It's not particularly difficult to crack. You can do it on your own. You don't need the item in game. But I'm not going to go through too much trouble with it because you're not going to be able to see what I write down. Just trust me on it. We can match the English of the title to this, and you can just get the letters here. So we have a T-H-E. So T is the wedge shape facing to the right with a single dot. H is a wedge shape facing left with 2 dots, and E is facing down with 5 dots. H, so we should see another left with 2 dots, that's correct. A is facing down with 1 dot. R is up with 5 dots. I think you get the idea. That's how it's going to go. And if you start writing these down, you will eventually discover the logic of how to work out every letter. You don't actually have to see every letter to figure it out. If you get the right amount of letters, you can guess. So my first hint here is notice that the A is the wedge facing down with a single dot, and the E is a wedge facing down with 5 dots. Now go through the English alphabet and count which letter is which. So A is the first letter, and E is the 5th letter. And from there, you should be able to figure out the system without too much trouble. Although we will find better hints later, but you can figure it out from this page. I think I've covered that 700 times in the last minute, so let's just read the book. Alright, the sun was setting, sending rays of orange and purple light to paint the wooden planks of the harbor bridge below my feet, creaking ever so softly through the otherwise calm lull of sea breeze. That evening was a memorable moment, having returned earlier that day from a successful Paida harvest with 2 of the harvesters based on Felitsu Island, Vioke and Caleb. Before I had stepped foot into the boat docked at the harbor, Vioke met me close to the Chianti Hall. I rejoiced at the sound of many workers, enjoying one another's company in the warm embrace of delicious drinks and food, and I felt comforted that our efforts to keep a productive and happy community thriving were proving successful. This Philidian was prospering. Vioke told me that the lavandishing furnace at the gun tower, which the workers on Neyyah refer to as Liriti, needed to be activated before we departed to the harbor to sail to the Scarlatti Towers. Caleb met us at the bottom of the tower where the Lavandis crystal furnace was situated. I had never seen one of these mechanisms in operation before. One Lavandis crystal from the Erlinish rock is placed within the furnace. A clamp with a needle is used to penetrate the crystal and keep it secured underneath the metal shade, brought over the crystal on a small, round, spinning concrete table. A gas called lativium is released from the crystal once the furnace is activated. This gas is lifted up into the top floor of the gun tower, powering the guns mounted there. This all needs to be operational before the harvest is brought back to the harbor from the Scarlatti Towers, so defenses are in place against any possible Elopolite attacks. As well as this, the Elopolite shield is manned before the boats can depart for the harvest. The plasma bulb shield itself needs to be prepared for activation if any Elopolite attack occurs. Usually, 4 workers can easily man the shield's plasma fountain flute system, and Gular crafts need to be positioned at correct stations at the Elopolite shield. Elopolite attacks were once heavily targeted at the harbor due to the arrival of the Paida harvest, and Sharusa Califrickel's thirst for the Paidas. The shield is now more of a precaution than a required defense measure. Despite Sharusa's whereabouts remaining unknown, there have been no sightings of his foul Elopolite creations for a good few years. The sedation chamber has been inactive at the Glorfiak mines for quite some time now. So with everything in place, we were finally able to board the boat docked at the harbor. The Toledo Triangle Gateway started to rise, bringing in beautiful white rays of sunlight. One of the harbor operators worked the spin rod mechanism built on the shore of a small watchtower, enabling the boat to start its descent down the main ramp using machinery built many moons ago in Fazaltian past, before the railcart tracks were constructed from the harbor to the Paida factory for Paida delivery. Before long we had set sail, cutting up the glistening white strips of sunlight that kissed the ocean waves. A flock of Talabrock birds flew overhead as though helping to guide us on our voyage. We were instructed by Caleb that a second boat would be meeting us halfway on our journey. This boat would be the second harvest collector to fulfill the Paida harvest operations at the levitation crane. I soon spotted the shape of the Scarlatti Tower's walled basin, where 3 big rounded chambers split the blue sky behind them in impressive silhouettes, a gorgeous mix of high concrete walls, plated in golden plaques depicting the Fazaltian flora, were the foundations to a walkway connecting each of the 3 towers together. Another flock of Talabrock birds swept over us as the grinding metal gears of the 2 entrances into the basin of the Scarlatti Towers began to groan into life. Our boats were heaped with crates ready to store the Paidas. They rattled endlessly as we passed through the gate into the flooded basin of the Scarlatti Towers. Then the thunderous cheer of the Fazaltian audience burst into life, onlookers getting ready to witness the spectacle about to take place, having arrived here for this special occasion from various areas of Fazalta. Neyyah provided a fantastic presentation of Paida harvesting, unlike any other Philidian. Our boat was suddenly enshrouded by bright sunlight as the silhouettes of the Scarlatti Towers loomed above us. The levitation crane awaited us. We continued sailing over the still calm waters that had filled the basin of the Scarlatti Towers. People gathered at specific entrances into the arena, pushing themselves against the railings, cheering as loud as they could at the sight of our approaching boats about to embark on a process which served as a crucial bloodline to this land. Vioki anchored the boat halfway from the entrance to the basin and the chute of the levitation tower, consisting of a cylinder of gold metal with a large gap in its center, tapering up towards a giant rod fused with various sized Lavandis crystals. This served as the main power source of levitation required to bring the Paidas out of the water, ready for collection. The crane began to burst into life. The 2 large, half-disc shaped metal plates started closing in towards the Lavandis crystal power source, causing the crystals to start glowing a bright green. These clamps would help power and focus the levitation crane's energy into the center of the chute. Our boats were getting very close to the stage, nearing the center of the chute where the Paidas would be levitated out of the water. An eruption was occurring below the water's surface, causing the water inside of the chute of the levitation crane to swell. The levitation was in process, signaled by a loud screech of shifting metal high above the crane. The hum of the crane's energy started to ring deep in my ears. Vibrations surged through the boat and worked their way deep into my bones. I had never felt anything like this before. I knew that the harvesting of Paidas required powerful sources of energy, but I could also feel how primal it was, the disturbance of the Paidas, untouched for years, now being brought into the open air for the first time. Quananavik had done well in choosing this specific location for the harvesting. Slowly, the white orb shapes of the emerging, incorrectly spelled, newly harvested Paidas began to rise out of the water. Vioki signaled to me that it was now time to start approaching the tower. While the Paidas were levitating at the center of the crane's chute, the energy of the levitation was at a safe level to begin the harvesting process. The cheers of the surrounding onlookers grew louder, an intense rush of excitement filling the arena, racing across the flooded waters of the basin, almost as fast as the vibrating energy of the levitation crane. I looked up and witnessed the workers in the Scarlatti Towers leaning out of the windows, most likely due to having finished the tasks required to make the levitation process run smoothly. I almost forgot myself, too. This audience had become aware that one of the Fazaltian rulers would be present for this specific harvest. I wouldn't say my presence here made much of a difference to the operations being conducted today. Vioki and Caleb were the prime examples of the hard work and dedication needed to oversee the harvesting of the Paidas. While I had been aware of Klonanovik's push for new designs and Paida harvesting mechanisms, I had not fully understood its powers, its complexities, or the raw power required from Philidian workers. They were the true heroes. Once we were close enough to the chute of the levitation crane, Vyoki's rope secured the boat to a wooden post close to a ladder leading up the side of the chute. While I stayed in the boat, Vyoki climbed the ladder to a small platform jutting out halfway up the side of the chute and opened a door which led inside the crane itself. The second boat began to slowly move in towards the center of the crane. There was a shift in the energy flow emitted from the crystals. I felt the water below the boat swell for a second. The hum of energy running through the metal of the chute started to change, lowering in its frequency. Before long, the bright green glow emitted by the lavandus crystals high above started to dim, replaced by a cool shade. From where I was positioned on the boat, I could see the Paidas had now fallen back down to the water's surface. The second boat was now slowly moving into the center of the chute to collect the beautiful white orbs, which would later become the colorful keys of power used on every Philidian on Feamor. We left the Scarlety Towers with 8 crates of Paidas, a very successful harvest. Upon my return to the harbor, Vyoki and Caleb departed to the Chianti Hall to rest and enjoy some leisure time after a hard afternoon's work. I decided to join another worker by the name of Leeson in transporting the Paidas to the cart nearby. The Paida factory would receive these payments on the other side of the rail, where the Payoltish Clan shall perform their magic on the newly harvested Paidas. My moments spent harvesting the Paida filled me with great pride and joy, knowing how strong our community has become as a working force, as a people. I am so proud of the men and women working so hard in delivering the resources needed to keep building our world and feeding the soul of our community. Neyyah flourishes. This was quite an adventure. Alrighty. So that book is just lore details. There's nothing in here that you actually need to solve the game. So in case you're like, there's got to be a hint there, there is not. It's just a description of what the ancient, ritual would be, the harvesting of the Paidas, stuff that Fizaltians did. I feel like I got to address this. I haven't really brought it up too much in the lore stuff. I like the lore of the game. I like how it's presented generally. I am okay with there being a lot of lore, especially a lot of lore that is not necessary for the game, right? This book is fine, so I'm not going to have a complaint about that. My complaint, however, is just about the writing in general, like the quality of the writing, and this is a complaint that many people have had. This book in particular is more noticeable. Other books, not so much. This one is noticeable for just the level of writing. It's the kind of thing that it's really begging for an editor. And I'm just going to leave it there. I don't want to dwell too much more on it, except to say that I don't think that necessarily the writing should have been trimmed shorter, although editing would probably make that happen. It's just that the editing would make it more clear and perhaps more vivid, because the description of this is 16 or whatever pages long, and I just feel like this book really could have used some zhuzhing, and most of the books in the game generally could have used editing. I wonder what that process was like in the creation of the game. I wonder if the Aaron, the solo dev here, just wrote everything himself, or if there was anyone else involved with it. But there you go. In case you're hearing this lore and going like, it just seems like it needed another round of edits, I agree with you on that, but I don't think there's anything wrong with having this lore, and I quite like it. Anyway, this is chair number 2. We've got the eyes facing down. So this is the Felitsu Island eyes. And we'll notice that by looking at the... can I look at this here? Yeah, looking at that. And it's red Paida there. And this says, I, Halist of the Payoltish Clan, come before you at Pinorvia Point within the walls of this main chambers, etc., etc. This is exactly the same page as was on the little lectern on Gelatrim's thing. The only difference here is the name. So just Payoltish Clan Council greetings. This is probably a template. So every time that these people meet, whoever is in charge at the time, or whoever is in charge of reading this stuff, you'd say, I, Halist, or if your name is Halist, you can say that, but if your name isn't Halist, you probably should say your real name. And then you would say the rest of that. That's the benediction or the greeting that you would do. And then you would get to business. Cool. So, I mean, we kind of get it. We saw that thing before. There's another book here. And by that I mean there's not another book here. I lied. This one is empty. There is a book that's supposed to be here. We can find it. It's actually pretty close by. We're going to see it in this video if I can get my rear end gear. I don't want this to be 4 hours of lore reading. But we'll find this book without too much trouble. It actually shows up in our journey tools. Hold on. Let's go to our traveler's guide here and go to Pinorvia Point. There appears to be a missing book in the central building, which makes, you know, a typical player go, oh, this book must be really important. I need to find it. It's another lore book. It's somewhere else. That's all. So don't get too hung up on whether that book is something you need to find. And then we got another mask here. This is the Scarlatti Towers mask, the angry eyebrows one, so it should be green. We'll see it in a second. Belilka. So Belilka, we've seen that name before in Vermeer's journal. He talked about his son, whose name is Neluka. By the way, learning to write in Galahanti, and so they had Belilka's name translated into Galahanti. So perhaps Belilka is the ruler of Scarlatti Towers, or something like that. It's kind of hard to tell at this moment in time. And there we go. That's the green one. And let's go around and look at another book. This one is not quite as long as the last one. We'll say that. It's got triangle symbols and the slats on the triangles. So the stuff that's on these towers that we've seen. The creation of the Volk Towers. And over here it says, let these words of our land, our blood, keep on empowering our people to shine, to be the best we can be and learn from our mistakes to make Fizalta a better world to live in. By the order of Lord Konanevik, I, Unarta, one of the 4 rulers of Fizalta, do hereby share my knowledge of our Fizaltian ways. So this is the same in every book. The only difference is the name of the 4 rulers. And I already have forgotten the other one. I didn't write down the names of the 4 rulers because it doesn't matter. Unarta. It's not the names on the sheets around the table. It's Gelitrim, Halist, Belilka, and then the 4th one we'll get to. These names in these books are different. And then the, T-H-E. So this C must be a wedge down with 3 dots, which makes sense, because if A is a wedge with 1 dot, which is here, and E is a wedge with 5 dots, A, B, C, D, E, right? So you can work that out. And at some point, we switch the wedge over. This wedge faces to the right, right? Instead of down, and it has a single dot, and that's a T. And T is the 20th letter of the alphabet, right? So it's probably going to be like there's a series of dots with the wedge facing down, and then once we run out of dots, we're going to switch to the wedge facing a different direction. And we can do that by checking this wedge here facing to the left with 2 dots. H is the 8th letter of the alphabet. So let's imagine we took our wedges facing down, and we put 1 dot, that's A, 2 dots will be B, we don't see that here, 3 dots is C, 4 would be D, and 5 would be E. So 6 is going to be F. So that's going to be this word here is of. Right there. So we got 6 dots on the F. Now, if G had 7 dots, that would mean H has to have 8 dots. But H doesn't. H has 2 dots, which means G is going to have 1 dot and it's going to be facing left. So there are 6 letters with the wedge facing down. A, B, C, D, E, F. And then starting at G, we're going to flip the wedge clockwise so it faces to the left. And GH, so I is going to have 3 dots facing left. There it is. J is going to face left with 4. K would be 5. L should be 6. So Volk right here. VOL. L is left with 6 dots. K is 5. M would normally have 7 dots, right? If you were to count it up, if you don't flip it. So let's just see what the N is. That's the last one of this. N is here, it's up with 1 dot. So M should be facing left with 7 dots. Again, this is a guess when we don't know, but chances are pretty good I've got this guess correct, right? I happen to know that there is 1 letter in Galahanti which doesn't follow the rule of all this, or at least there's a section of the game with a Galahanti letter that doesn't follow the rule. But we can go with this rule and it'll work out. So we start flipping it up at the letter N, and then O comes after N, which means it has 2 dots. P is after that, should have 3. Q should have 4 dots. R should have 5. So towers, R is here. S has 6, that's the letter after that. Q, R, S, T, we already know T is 1 dot, so that's when we flip it again so it faces to the right. T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z, that should get you through the alphabet. So Z or Z, if you're correct, should be pointed to the right with 7 dots. And that's Galahanty for you. All right, now let's actually read a real book. Once Hyan had perished, and Sharus... Oh, spoilers, jeez. Once Hyan had perished, and Sharus had gone into hiding, myself and the other 3 rulers of Fazalta decided that extra security and protection measures needed to be implemented. The levitation crane was the main concern. It needed to be separated from the rest of Neyyah, just as the Velatron temple had been separated from the rest of the Philidian via a portal, built inside a deep cavern. During this time, murals had also been drawn up depicting 4 core processes behind the importance of Paidas. They were placed around the walls of the cavern where the portal to the Velatron temple sat at its center. Paidas would be required to enter the portal cave, which was built into the cliffs on the Lavandis Crystal coastline, and the portal's activation would also require the 4 members of the Payoltish Clan to insert Paidas. Lord Quananovic brought together the members of the Payoltish Clan and worked alongside an engineer named Jayobi Scarlatti, the son of Liafelk Scarlatti, who had designed the Scarlatti Towers. Together they developed a very powerful teleportation system strong enough to be able to separate large areas of land. 4 towers were built called Volk Towers, which contained a very complicated plasma energy stored within the walls of the towers and running deep down into the rocky islands each Volk Tower was built upon. The plasma is very well protected. If the towers are destroyed, an explosive surge of energy is sent out across a large radius which will destroy anything in its path. Volk Towers also send energy to large areas of Neyyah that require power, such as old Fazaltian light systems and the mechanisms once used to power the old portal to the Velatron Temple. The Scarlatti Towers was the one area of Neyyah which was required to remain in its original location due to where the Paidas were grown below the levitation crane. 3 other major land masses were separated, however, consisting of Felitsu Island, Pinorvia Point, and Golorfiak Mines, while a sanctuary zone was created for the Nyashka plant area, forming a center point for being able to access these 4 areas of Neyyah via powerful portal systems called Talita portals. Huge distances were put between these areas of Neyyah, generating various weather systems and time zones. Machines were created to keep a track of 3 different details associated with the Volk-separated areas of Neyyah: the sun's position, the location of Neyyah, and the current weather temperature. Each Volk tower shows its active power source with a large Talita portal symbol built on top of each tower, glowing bright with the color of the specific Neyyah location. The Volk towers have enabled Neyyah to remain protected from any potential Elopolite attack and keep the production of Paidas prospering. Now this book is more important, because it actually describes stuff we're interacting with. So Volk towers here were created to separate areas of Neyyah. So the areas we're in, Pinorvia Point, Scarlatti Towers, Felitsu Island, they're all very far apart. We have to travel by portal. We at first thought this was done by Vamir, because there's the note from Smollax wondering why Vamir separated Felitsu Island into multiple pieces. Well, Vamir didn't do the whole thing. The Fazaltians did, and they did it apparently as protection against Elopolites and Sharus and all that kind of stuff. So the areas of Neyyah were separated by making these very powerful towers, the Volk Towers. And the Volk Towers not only were powerful enough to separate the areas of Neyyah, they were also powerful enough to just generally power those areas. They serve as just giant generators for them, and dead man switches, essentially. If the towers are destroyed, they basically wipe out the entire area. It's done. So, not sure why that was added. Perhaps it's a kill switch in case the area were to be overrun by Elopolites or something like that. They could destroy the tower, wipe the whole thing out, so that Sharus or whoever's the bad guy now can't get a hold of Paida technology, right? So they did all this. Later on, Vamir borrowed from that system to separate Felitsu Island into a further 5 zones. right? So we have the central plus the 4 outer zones. Felitsu Island is its own zone, which was then separated into 5 pieces by Vermeer for different reasons. He did it, I think it was mostly to separate for climate reasons, to protect the Felitsu Dome from the creeping vines, and possibly to keep Smolax from knowing what he was up to. So those are different events, but they're the same basic principle. You use the Volk Towers to split the areas up. The Volk Towers also contain information on the top. We saw the Volk Tower at Felitsu Island, the harbor zone, had the triangle with 3 red dots on it. Those dots supposedly say the position of the sun, the location of Neyyah, a symbol that's representative of Felitsu Island, and then the temperature, right? That's what it's going to say. Now, we're never going to go to the Volk Towers. It looks like we should go there. They're actually not an area we go to in the game. We don't use them. But we do have to find a way to read what the Volk Tower triangle says. We do want to know that. And unfortunately, we can't do it just by looking at the tower directly. We're not going to get close enough to the towers to see that. We're going to have to find another way. Awesome. Now that we've all been thoroughly lectured about Volk Towers, let's take a look at this final chair. And we see I, Latroque, or Latroque, of the Payoltish Clan, and all of this text. And that's the person in charge of Pinorvia Point, because that's what this mask means, and it's the blue Paida. And then there should be a book on this lectern we can read. Indeed, it's got the masks on there. Let these words of our land, etc., etc., by the order of Lord Quonanovic, I, Bellicane, that's the person. So yeah, these names don't match. These are original rulers, and they've written these wonderful books for us. So Payoltish clans, we can also check our Galahanta here. So the letter P should be 3 dots. Yep, 3 dots facing up. Y should be 6 dots facing to the right. Is that right? Yes, it is. What's another word? Betrayal, 2 dots facing down, was it? Yeah, down. So yeah, we've got it correct. That's how we can read the Galahanti. And I didn't bother to write all the letters down in Galahanti because it just didn't seem important to me, because we don't actually really need to read any of it ever. It's extra lore stuff. So if I don't pay any more attention to Galahanti, that is why. I'm just making it sort of a just in case disclaimer here. I'm probably gonna care about it because I am a perfectionist and a yapper, 2 things that are absolutely atrocious at parties. Alright, here's the book. Each Philidian can generate a wealth of paidas, natural pearls which grow deep underwater at certain locations of Feomor's vast oceans. Quonanovic designed ways to harvest these pearls, once realizing the natural energies that could be extracted from them, powering various areas of Fazalta, the defenses we have against our enemies, through to the fuel required for various mechanical operations. However, one Philidian was the location for what was termed as the creation. The creation is performed by a specific set of individuals called Payoltish clans, who are sent to Quone, far into the very heart of Fazalta, where they are trained by our Lord Quonanovic in molding the fresh Paida pearls. Specifically designed factories are built and equipped with a variety of mechanisms in which to aid the Payoltish clans in generating the power for the Paidas to become operational. On Quone, the chosen members who make up the clans undergo vigorous training, sustaining immunity against a gas called Viafil, which gets stored in large tanks at the center of the factory buildings. Human-sized capsules are connected to these tanks, which the Payoltish clan members are locked into. Adorned with masks to breathe in the Viafil, the Payoltish clan enter a dreamlike state, the likes of which are still felt... Nope, that's not the word. The likes of which are still left ambiguous to this day. However, speculation has led to the idea that in order to bear such power as bringing powerful energies to these natural resources on Feomor, there may very well be a connection to the very realm of the Pelskas itself. I can't begin to imagine what this must do to one's mind. It's also important that only a very specific amount of Viafil gas is released into each capsule. An overdose of the gas is definitely fatal. Payoltish members need to work together in order for the creation process to be successful. They need to be locked inside the capsules for half an hour, guarded by a Philidian warrior who is usually specifically chosen to guard and protect each member of the Payoltish clan. Once the process is completed, Paidas can be lowered down to a bottom level of the Paida factory, ready for collection. At this stage, the Paidas have been molded and shaped, coated and colored into the newly created Paidas, which provide power across Fazalta. Neyyah, or what used to be called the Blue Philidian, was a specifically designed Philidian requiring the power of 5 Payoltish clan members to power the Paidas. One particular Payoltish clan member by the name of Cherus Califrical oversaw the development of the Velatron, a machine designed to cleanse the Paida so they were recharged and could be reused. He was very close to the 4 rulers of Fazalta and became obsessed with the Velatron and developing its capabilities. Over time, he betrayed the Payoltish clans and the 4 rulers of Fazalta, insisting he would protect an ancient sea serpent in Fëanor called an Elapalai. Instead, he would run experiments on them and other Fazaltians. Elapalites became the result of Elapalai and human transformations. These creatures served Cherus in one of the biggest battles ever fought against Fazalta. Cherus was bent on the idea of capturing the Velatron machine for what he termed as the next stage of his ascending. He believed he had the power of the Paida within him, the power of Fëanor itself. Thus, a defense was made. Gun towers constructed on the edges of cliff edges, looking out across the open seas and armed with various weapons to fight off any Elapalite attacks. It was the attack on the bridge to the Velatron Temple which led to the death of Hyan, one of the most acclaimed, well-known warriors of the Blue Philidian. Once he had died, Lord Quananavik, he here being Hyan, not Quananavik, Lord Quananavik desired the name Blue Philidian should be changed to Hyan, named after its fearsome warrior who had died defending the Velatron machine. However, his family didn't want his name associated with what they would refer to as a place of death. While the Elapalites were eradicated and Cherus had fled far away to a place still unknown to this day, the Blue Philidian had become a heavy military base. A feeling of looming war rested in the air, and for a while this Philidian felt unsafe. Pelskas were told to be on high alert in the protection of all Philidians across Fëanor, so as a compromise, Quananavik decided upon Neyyah as the new name for the Blue Philidian, a reflection of Hyan's name, imprinting his force, his memory, and his fierceness within the Philidian. The Velatron machine remains protected, now separated from the rest of Neyyah, and a portal built to link the temple back to the rest of the Philidian. Cherus Califrical's location still remains a mystery. In the name of Fazalta, in the spirit of Hyan, Neyyah stands proud as one of the strongest fortified areas of Fazalta. Alright, some other important information there. One of them being that the Velatron machine is in the Velatron Temple, which has also been separated the same way other areas of Neyyah were separated using the Volk Towers. And the portal is somewhere else, and another book said that the portal was in the cave at the Lavandis Zone, which we've been to. We can't get to that portal, and the portal's broken. But luckily there is a second portal that Vamir has mentioned, and that's hidden in the water tank. So there is a way back to the Velatron Temple. That is the way. We have to do a few other things first. This book also explains why this area has so many gun towers and things like that. This area is now a military base because it was the site of a bunch of battles by this Cherus character. It also tells us that Elapalites that we're hearing are human-serpent hybrids. So they're not human. They're genetic experiments. Which is kind of freaky. Well, Fazaltian plus serpent. Yeah, it says human transformation. So Fazaltians are human. I always have to try to remember, because we don't ever really see the Fazaltians running around in this game, so we don't get to see if they're human, but they look a little different, like it's Star Trek aliens, or whether they're actual strange beasts. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing Cherus's last name right, but Califrical is very funny to say. There's also the description of the ritual at the factory to create and power the Paidas, which is the tank we saw in the factory where we got our gas mask. Those gas masks are intended to protect against this Viafil gas, which, it causes the dreamlike state, which allows the Payoltish clan to do their magic, basically. So the gas mask means they'll survive, otherwise they would die, but they still can only be in there for a half an hour. They can only be in there for a little bit. So that explains why there's a tank that's got a bunch of locked doors on it, or not locked, but like doors in there with gas masks on it. You put the guys in there, they power up the Paidas, they're sent down, and the factory does their business from there. And so the Payoltish clan isn't really the rulers so much as the people who are in charge of the Paidas. That's why the names in these books don't match. Why Bellicane is one of the 4 rulers, but Bellicane is not one of the people on these lists here. The 4 people in the chairs are the Payoltish clan. They're the ones that get high on the space gas, whatever it is, Viafil. Whereas the rulers here are just the political leaders. So that's the distinction made there. Cool. Well, that's a lot of lore, and I'm going to stop there because it's been a while, a lot of reading books, and then in the next video we will explore the rest of Pinorvia Point. I think there's one more book in Pinorvia Point, but it's short, so we'll just get to it because I don't want to do it now because it's a bit of a trek from here. So it'll be pushed into the next video. But otherwise, this one we've locked all the lore to one video. So if lore isn't your thing, and you're hearing me say this, why did you watch it? I'm going to say that's your fault. Otherwise, I'll meet you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you're all having a good day. Goodbye.